and welcome to week 14 of Ari on TV. I'm Miss Jess, and today we're learning about our imaginations to think outside the box. What does it mean to think outside the box? Do we imagine our brain in a box and then outside one? No. It means to think in a different, more imaginative and creative way. To think outside the box is to look further and to try not thinking of the obvious things, but to try thinking of the things beyond them, or even other than those. That takes imagination, and that is our theme for this month. As Unitarian Universalists, our faith asks us to be questioning and imaginative. It's part of our fifth UU source, and it goes like this. We heed the guidance of reason and the results of science. Sometimes people think of science and imagination as opposites. But we have a guest scientist on our show today that will help us figure out how imagination and reason work together to help us understand the world and to invent new things. Scientists and inventors need to question and use their imagination. Before we do that, welcome into this quiet place of beauty. We come from busy things. Pausing for a moment for the thoughts that quiet brings. Our chalice lighter this week is Charlie.
We light this chalice for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of action.
Have you heard of the famous physicist Albert Einstein? He once said, "I am enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination." Imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited, whereas imagination encircles the world. So let's take this box idea and see if we can think outside the box and use our imaginations. I have a box. What could this box be? It could hold a book. It could be a house for a little mouse. It could control a robot. How creative can we get? How far can we think outside the box? Could it be a galaxy within ours? Could it be God? What ideas can you come up with? We have a guest scientist with us this week. Dr. Karen is here to tell us more about how scientists use their imaginations. Dr. Karen?
Hi guys, it's nice to be with you again, and today I want to tell a story about Beatrix Potter. And you may not be familiar with her name, but I think when you hear this story you're going to be familiar with something that came out of her imagination. And our theme for the month is imagination. So I'm going to talk about a couple of imagination from a couple of different angles. Beatrix Potter lived in London, England, and she, the only person that she had, the only other child she had to play with was her younger brother. London, England is a big city, but she was not allowed to play with the children in her neighborhood, and Bertram went away to boarding school. He went away to school, but she was schooled at home, so she didn't have any school friends, and she didn't get to play with the other children in her neighborhood. So you might think that she was lonely, but actually she wasn't as lonely as you might think, because she had friends that she made with all the plants and the animals in the garden and in her yard. She would get out in nature and make friends with the plants and animals. In the summertime, her family took long vacations to Scotland and to the Lake District of England, where she could really be out in nature. Now she was out of the city, and she loved being out there and going to visit. When she went back to London, she would bring some of the countryside back with her by taming wild rabbits and keeping them as pets. She kept mice in a cage and a lizard and snakes, and she even had a pet bat. When she was in the countryside, she would spend hours and hours outside, and she loved to draw detailed pictures of the plants and the animals that she found. She wanted to know everything about the natural world so that she could be a scientist when she grew up. But unfortunately, she was young more than 100 years ago, and it wasn't considered proper for a girl to have a job, and certainly not as a scientist. So Beatrix's parents were very concerned that she grow up to be a proper young lady, and so nobody really encouraged her to keep drawing the plants and animals, but she kept studying them because they were her friends, and she was a careful observer of everything she saw in nature. She made such careful drawings that they were useful to other scientists, and because she would look at them so closely. And you can see in this picture that she didn't just draw what she could see with her eyes, she used a magnifying glass to really get the details. Even though her sketches were helpful to other, that wasn't the same as being a scientist, but as it turned out, her drawings and her imagination earned her a different kind of success that she didn't even imagine. In 1893, she wrote a letter to Noel, and he had been sick in bed for a long time. This was the son of her governess, and she wrote him this little letter, and she drew the sketches, and she started the letter, "I don't know what to write to you, so I'll tell you a story about four little rabbits whose names are Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter." Wonder if you've ever heard of those names and those rabbits. Well, it turned out that Beatrix Potter made them up, and she based them on real rabbits that she had watched, and her drawings very were very good, but in her story she gave them clothes, and they acted like people. They got into mischief and they went on adventures, and so the stories came totally out of her imagination. It was really quite different. This book was The Tale of Peter Rabbit. This story became a book that got published, and it was The Tale of Peter Rabbit. And to this day, this is one of the best-selling children's books of all time. So you might have heard of it before. After the Tale of Peter Rabbit got published, she wrote and illustrated 22 more books, all about animals that have been her friends in England, in the countryside: hedgehogs and frogs and ducks and mice and squirrels. She knew them all very well from spending time with them and from observing their ways and making drawings of them, and she drew these beautiful little books that had stories with the animals and her drawings. Beatrix Potter earned enough money from her books that she could buy a farm in the English Lake District, a place that she had always loved, and she made it a working farm. She raised sheep on her farm, and over time she bought more of the land around her farm to keep it as a natural home for plants and animals, so that it wouldn't be bought up and sold for factories or houses. When she died in 1943, she gave 4,000 acres to the National Trust, an English organization that protects and preserves beautiful natural lands. And if you visited England today, you could visit the Beatrix Potter's farmhouse, and you could walk in the countryside all around her farm site just as she did so many years ago when she was a young child. So this is how she used her imagination and was able to share her stories with others. So when we think about imagination, we do often think of stories or drawings, art, or drama. But I'm a scientist, and I wanted to share with you some ways that scientists also use their imagination. And what I'm going to tell you about, as what I'm going to use as my first example, is this virus. This is electron micrograph of the coronavirus. So this is a picture taken with the strongest microscope we have, because viruses are tiny, 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 and they can only be seen with the strongest microscopes. And even with that powerful microscope, you still get this kind of fuzzy image of what the virus might look like. So what scientists do is that they study the virus in lots of different ways, and then they put the information together into a model. And I have a model of the coronavirus here, and I'll just show you a few things. So you can see these spike proteins. We can study those just as the proteins separate from the virus and learn more about their shape and what they attach to. You can see the yellow part of this virus has other little proteins in it that are either blue or white. And so we can imagine what that image of the virus looks like in 3 dimensions. What we can't do with the microscope, but we can do in other ways, is figure out what's inside of the virus. And inside of the virus is some instructions for how the virus is going to make more virus. The virus just infects our cells and then uses these instructions to reproduce and make more virus. They kind of take over the machinery of our cells, and that's what ends up destroying our cells and making us sick. And then the other piece of this model shows this small base is indicating a portion of the human cell that the virus is going to attach to. And in my model, these spike proteins are actually looking for a specific protein on the surface of particular cells. So that's shown with the little green protein there. And the virus uses that green protein as kind of a landing pad. So it'll attach to it when it gets near the right cells, and that attachment to the cells will cause it to get taken up by those cells. And then once the virus is inside, it can use its instructions to make more virus. So this is a model, and this is a model that we formulate from lots of different pieces of information about what the virus looks like in 3 dimensions and how it gets inside of the cells and how it makes more virus. So the next part of the imagination, this is in thinking about how scientists use their imagination, you will have some puzzle pieces to work with. And each one of these puzzle pieces will kind of illustrate different bits of information that you get, like the scientists would gather in finding out about something, and show you how you might use that to make a model So when scientists discover something new and they're trying to understand what the meaning of it is, they make a model. And I'm using these puzzle pieces to kind of illustrate that process of making a model and collecting more information. So we start off with this triangle. It's one bit of information, and we have this triangle model. And then we get a new bit of information, and let's see if we can put it together with our other bit of information to make a new model. Well, we could put it together this way, and it would make a square. Or we could put it together this way and make a parallelogram. Or let's see if there's any other ways that we could make this work. Let's see, we could put it together this way and make a bigger triangle. So our first model was a triangle, and we get a new bit of information, and now it still works to be a triangle. But we know those other models are out there. Maybe it's a square, maybe it's a parallelogram. So how do we know what the right answer is? Well, we need more information. We collect more information. So these other puzzle pieces represent the new information that we can collect. And then the challenge will be to fit all of these pieces together into a triangle. Let's stick with the triangle model. Let's say that it's a triangle, and see if you can fit all of these 5 pieces together in a triangle. So that's my challenge to you. See if you can fit these together in a triangle. And if you do, send a picture of it to me or to Miss Jess so that I'll see what you have figured out. There are 3 or 4 possible solutions. So even if somebody else in your household figures one out, keep trying because you might find a different one. Then, once you've used these 5 pieces to make a triangle, there's one more challenge that comes with these puzzle pieces, and it has to do with this one different colored shape. And that one, you're going to try and fit that in, and at that point the triangle model is not going to work anymore, but fit all the pieces together in some geometric shape. So that's your challenge number 2, is to fit all 6 pieces together into a geometric shape. For that one, there are 3 possible solutions, and again, I don't know them all, so I'll be excited to see what you come up with using your imagination. All right, I look forward to seeing your pictures. Take care.
Thanks, Dr. Karen. If you're registered for our RE program, look in your mailbox this week for an envelope from Dr. Karen. You'll be able to use your imagination to build your own models and solve her challenge. When you do, make sure you send her some pictures. She would love to see what you come up with. And now Miss Leah is here with her Song of Imagination.
Who will I be?
Who will I be?
What will I see?
What will I see?
In this great world,
In this great world,
who could be free?
who could be free?
And what will I build?
What will I build?
What will I find?
What will I find?
My story begins
The story begins
inside my mind.
inside my mind.
Who will I be?
Who will I be?
And what will I see?
What will I see?
In this great world,
In this great world,
who could be free?
who could be free?
What will I build?
What will I build?
And what will I find?
What will I find?
My story begins
Story begins
inside my mind.
inside my mind.
in my imagination.
That's it for our show this week. Don't forget to visit our virtual lab for more links and activities you can do at home to use your imagination. Can you say the words with me for extinguishing the chalice? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. I'll see you back here next month when we start our theme of beloved community together. Until then, blessed be my love.